what's in a name? Every culture on the planet uses the idea of names to identify themselves and to remember their ancestors. Names mean history, and history for the Quapaw Nation is something taken very seriously. The tribe today is thriving with 5,000 members and growing, and has a strong connection to its ancestry. How all Native American tribes have remembered history is paramount in determining how they function today. The Quapaw tribe is now run by a council with a chairman at its head, but that was not always true. At one time, we had chiefs, a family line that would make the rules and talk to other governing bodies. So what happened? When the Quapaw Nation was moved to Indian Territory in 1834, they lost a lot of land that they were originally accustomed to. They went from occupying the eastern half of Arkansas to being shoved into a tiny corner of Oklahoma, which they were then forced to divide and share among other tribes moved there. Fast forwarding to the late 1800s, the Quapaw Nation had now been more established in their new territory. The chief at that time was a man named Louis Angel, or his more colloquially known name, Tall Chief, a very apt name as oral accounts put him at around 7 feet tall. As chief, he had many responsibilities, the most prevalent of these having to do with ceremonies in the tribe. If a tribe member was sick, he was called to perform a ritual to help heal them. If there was any meeting, he was required to be there. And if a baby was born, he was needed to name them, as he was the only one who could. And this was something very interesting to me, because the Quapaw tribe doesn't do this anymore. In fact, there are many rituals like these that we don't do anymore. But why? There are many reasons as to why the naming ceremony is in practice today, but the main reason has everything to do with Rise Supernaw Proctor, or Grandma Supernaw. Supernaw was the only surviving daughter of Tall Chief, but since she was a woman, she could not inherit the title of chief, but she was able to do all the things that a chief was supposed to do, and this includes the naming ceremony. To help explain the ceremony, I've enlisted 2 extremely reputable and research professionals in Quapaw culture, and these would be my aunt and my mom. Do you know what a Quapaw naming ceremony is?
I do.
Okay, could you explain a little bit of it?
As far as I know there is a person in our tribe generally that does the naming from the Supernaw family. Every family's different, every tribe is different. Names are different. They're given at different times. Some are given at birth. Some people can even have multiple names. So, from what I've been told, the last person that had the rights to name Quapaw babies was Grandma Supernaw. It can be just given to you at birth. It can be given to you at a ceremony for accomplishment or something that you've done. It can be given to you by family just because of personality or things. What you would do is you would let her know that you've had a child and you would like her to name them. And then after she would let you know when she was ready, you would go and then you would take gifts, linens or fabric, foodstuffs, things like that. You always brought an eagle feather. You would take the child and your gifts to Grandma, and she would go out and she would pray and burn cedar, and then she would come back with 2 or 3 names, and then you would choose the name that you wanted for your infant, and then she would bless the child, and that would be their name. And then I guess they probably kept track of who all had what name so that they didn't repeat them too often. Some people will ask their own family member, like an elder in their family, to do that, which is what I did. Because to me, that's more personal, having it coming from somebody like a grandparent, something like that, as opposed to the Supernaws and things like that. Not trying to break tradition, but I kind of did my own tradition because it was more personal, I guess, more as my personal families as opposed to our tribe in general and going to the Supernaw and all that kind of stuff. But the naming ceremony died with Grandma. So I don't know. So there's a lot of missing pieces that I don't know.
Yep.
I'm sure people older than me probably even remember, but I wasn't around yet.
The reason why this naming ceremony died with Grandma Supernaw was because she never successfully named another chief. And I say successfully because she did name other chiefs a few times, but every time she did, they would meet an early death. So, convinced that she was cursed by the power her father gave her, she stopped trying. She never passed on any of that power, and we've lost a lot of cultural practices because of it. Now we see why today we have elected chairmen and other elected officials in a council, and why many of our old ceremonies are just now old stories. I found out about the naming ceremony from a book called The Journal of American Folklore. It has 2 sentences about it. Just 2. I had never heard about it before, so I started looking more into it. My next bit of success was found in an interview of Grandma Supernaw where she described some of the name-giving ceremony. I then found a few more interviews about the topic, but I couldn't help but notice that all of this information was criminally incomplete. It was impossible to get the whole picture from just these interviews. I obviously couldn't talk to the page, ask it questions, or try to derive more context around a naming ceremony. What I saw was all I got. Then I asked my mom about it, and immediately I was giving context, detail, personal accounts, and opinions about it. This is how we were meant to learn. This is how the Quapaw people have passed down knowledge since the beginning.
There's been so much taken away, generation after generation after generation, that mindset of what's the point of working hard and doing more, it's just going to be taken away from me. And even though that hasn't occurred to my generation, there are still people in my generation who have that same mindset because it's been passed down from generation.
Indian boarding schools were still taking young Native Americans from their homes in the 1970s. My great-grandmother was the last person in my family to experience this dark part of American history. Boarding schools account for the loss of a depressing amount of history, language, and culture. They taught the native peoples that their way of communicating, of remembering their families and ancestors, was wrong. Students were punished for speaking their native language and taught that they were lesser than the white race. And even though there were no more boarding schools, their effects are still felt today. It sometimes seems like the names of our ancestors are all that we have left. But it's not. We have our stories still. I have a mother, aunts, grandmothers, uncles, and cousins who all carry their own stories, and the stories of their parents and their grandparents and so on. The Quapaw Nation is not fading away. Despite the efforts made to erase us, we carry on. And we will continue to carry on, to give our children their names, and to watch them live their stories.